Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact of the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Yep. I remember a lot of the calls, but one of the things that I want to share with you and your listeners is about the first time I had to dispatch or tone out the fire department by myself. So I had gone through that process with my CTO many times before I'd gotten released. And that was back in the days where you had to type in the specific station code and then hit the tones.
Yes.
Right. So we have a list of all the stations, and I think it was a medical. So take this call in the middle of the night, and I'm all by myself. There's nobody to help me. And I just remember that my heart started racing. I typed in the code, I hit the tones, and I couldn't get the words out. I stumbled over my words. It was a complete hot mess. And I didn't convey the appropriate information for anybody to know what the heck to do.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you all very, very much, but especially all of you who are watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. Thank you. I am in Texas this week, and I landed in Dallas, Fort Worth, and for whatever reason, immediately I started playing the Dallas theme music in my head, which is probably past a lot of yours time who are watching this right now. But there was a show in the 80s called Dallas, and I was immediately looking for JR. So I'm here teaching, recording episodes. It is going to be awesome. I'll be teaching for Tarrant County, and the next week I'll be in California for National NENA. And we're going to jump right in. I'm here with my guest today. I'm honored to be here with him. And this is Chief Manoushagian, and he's out of Lake Worth PD. How's it going?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm honored to have you here. And you know what I feel is awesome is I've met a lot of chiefs, sheriffs, and such who come from the chair, who have been under the headset right off the bat. And they end up transitioning. They go in and they do other things in law enforcement, public safety. So it's really cool. I got to hear a little bit about you before we started, that you started in dispatch first. So let's just start from the beginning. Let's hop into that DeLorean. Let's go back in time. And you have been in public safety for a total of about 21 years now, correct?
Correct.
And you started out in dispatch. So how did you get in public safety to begin with?
I can remember back in high school and seeing the SROs in my school and having a lot of appreciation for what they did. And when you're about to step out into the real world and you start to consider what you may want to do for a living, I remember looking at them and thinking that would be a pretty cool job. And so I moved away to college. My dad was pretty insistent that he wanted me off the payroll and needed me to get a job. And so I went on a retreat with a few of my friends, and we were not old enough to sign the lease. Mm-hmm. And so we had to have a parent go with us, even though, we're young adults. One of the parents happened to be a dispatcher. And I was sharing with her about my desire to go into law enforcement. And she said, well, you can't do that for several years. Have you ever thought about being a dispatcher? Mm-hmm. And the answer was no. I'd never thought of that. And so I picked up a couple of applications from departments for telecommunicator jobs and ended up getting hired in my hometown where I was born and raised. And, did that for a year, fell in love with it. And it was just what I needed to affirm my decision that public safety government service was the right thing for me.
So did you have the ability to go in and do a sit-along or anything like that? Or did you just kind of jump in not knowing what it even looked like on the inside?
Yes. Okay. So I put in my application and I got set up to meet with the chief. This is a very small town. The PD probably only had 20 employees or less than 10,000 people in the community. And so I show up. I go into the chief's office, we sit down and we visit for a second. And he was like, well, would you like me to show you around? Sure. So he took me down to dispatch. And I remember this young lady, she's all by herself. It's one dispatcher on at a time. Mm-hmm. And, she's got multiple computer screens and she's holding two phones. One is the 911 phone, one is the regular phone. And there's, the radio's going off and there's all this stuff happening. And the chief looked at me and said, you think you can do that? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, okay. And that was it. That was it.
Welcome to dispatch.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure now looking back as a chief, they were probably desperate, and here comes a warm body, eager to get involved. And so they took a chance on me for whatever reason. Now, mind you, at that time, this is before the military. So I had long hair, I had earrings. I was probably wearing a t-shirt that was 3 or 4 sizes too small. So all of those things considered, I'm surprised I got the job, but it was so much fun. And it was one of those jobs that I remember telling people at the time, I would do this for free. I love what I'm doing.
Wow. So you end up going in there. He asks you if you can do it. You say, yes, sir. And things start rolling. Yeah. So do you jump right into training? And how long did the training last?
Yes. So I got paired with my CTO. Mm-hmm. We were working nights, deep nights. And I had never worked nights before in my life. I'm 18 years old, get this job. I'm thankful to have a job, but I didn't know how to prepare to work all night. I didn't, understand how to adjust my sleep schedule and certainly wasn't aware of all the effects that would have on my life working overnight. But yeah, I just showed up. They said, be here at 11. And so I showed up at 11. I was introduced and we just start learning. Mind you, this is, 20 plus years ago. So things were a lot different then, but step by step. And one of the things that I remember most about Candy, who was my CTO, she said, it's not my job to teach you everything. It's my job to teach you where to find the answers. Because I'm not always going to be able to be here with you.
Right.
But if you're going to make an entry or whatever, and you forget these codes that I'm teaching you, you just need to look right here. So
it's funny that you mentioned that her name was Candy, because when I very first started out dispatching, it was in a very small town in Central Florida. I'm originally from Southwest Michigan, but I ended up going to visit my mom, my grandmother, and my younger sisters for a couple of weeks, and it turned into a month, and then it turned into like a 4-year stay. But that's where my dispatch career started. And when I went in, our records clerk, her name was Candy, and she introduced me into a lot of different things. She didn't actually dispatch, but she knew a lot of the stuff. So that you kind of gave me goosebumps there a little bit. You threw me back. So you end up going in, you go through your training and all. Do you remember some of those earlier calls, whether it be the first call or just some of the earlier ones that you were taking? I mean, because at 18, I started at 19 in 2001. So it blows your mind, the things that you end up hearing.
Yep. I remember a lot of the calls, but one of the things that I want to share with you and your listeners is about the first time I had to dispatch or tone out the fire department by myself. So I had gone through that process with my CTO many times before I'd gotten released. And that was back in the days where you had to type in the specific station code and then hit the tones.
Yes.
Right. So we have a list of all the stations, and I think it was a medical. So take this call in the middle of the night, and I'm all by myself. There's nobody to help me. And I just remember that my heart started racing. I typed in the code, I hit the tones, and I couldn't get the words out. I stumbled over my words. It was a complete hot mess. And I didn't convey the appropriate information for anybody to know what the heck to do. I just set the tones off for all these people, the volunteer fire department and the ambulance in the middle of the night. And now nobody knows what to do. I feel like a huge idiot. Okay, well, I royally screwed that up. But somebody out there still needs help. So what are you going to do to fix it? Right. So I had to do it all over again. I just said, I can't handle this over the phone. I can't do it over the radio. I'm just going to have to retone them. So I type it in, push it out. But here's the thing. My supervisor's husband was on the volunteer fire department. So she heard everything. In the middle of the night, she heard everything. And, so she came in the next morning and I just had to face her. She wasn't mad. I mean, she understood. But just a super embarrassing, humbling moment. And I'll never forget that when you're alone in the middle of the night and you're trying to do something huge, something really important, and then you fail, you fall on your face. And there's so many people out there that you admire and respect that heard it. Right. But just to all the young dispatchers out there that make a mistake or get, super caught up in a particular failure, just know that it's not something that you can't overcome. We all do it. It happens to everybody. But, one of those things that, what a way to start out a career with a very humbling moment.
Yes. Yeah. Those, especially because you're there by yourself, right? Was it 8 hours or 12 hours?
Both. We did an 8-hour shift, 2 12 hours, and then another 8 hour.
So then depending on whether it was an 8 or a 12, let's just say you're sitting there after that and you're the only one there.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of waiting for someone to show back up to the PD to face that as well.
Yeah. And there's a hole that you have to dig out of because you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm such an idiot. I'm not cut out for this. Clearly, when it matters, I can't do, so you really get in your head about all of that. And then you have to come to this point where you say, no, that was a one-time failure. I'm going to do better on the next one. I know how it feels. I know what I would do different, and I'm not going to let this hold me back. And from there, I just tried to use that moment as a springboard to get better. Once you realize how bad something feels and you make up your mind, like, I don't want to be there, I don't want to go back to that feeling, that's a pretty good motivator.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, especially in the beginning, we put so much pressure on ourselves, even seasoned, there's, because there'll be times where, like you're saying, you get in your head, and moments where you start to blame yourself for whatever happened on the call or something that you went on the field for. And that we have to get out of our heads as well, because that will bring you down. So I love that. And also, for those who are watching and listening, I mean, you really only fail if you, one, don't change, you don't learn from it, because failure in that sense, it's a learning lesson. Sometimes they're hard lessons, right? And like you said, very humbling, but you end up learning and you take that experience with you.
Yeah.
So you go through this, you have this moment, you have the moment with the supervisor and all, you continue at it though, you keep going.
Sure.
And after that year, you end up going into the military, right?
Yep. So I had been around enough to know that I wanted to be a police officer. Being in dispatch, and again, being in a small town, we are hand in hand, same building, same spaces. I did a lot of ride-alongs to try to understand both sides of the job. And again, it was enough for me to say, this is exactly what I want to do. I feel like this is what I was put on the planet to do. And so I had a decision to make. In Texas, you can't be a police officer until you're 21. And I was only 18. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do with those years. And my goal was to be the best prepared police officer that I could. During that time, this was about 2004, so we were knee deep in the war in Iraq. And I thought, well, there's a lot of benefits that go with the military. I'd taken the ASVAB, the military entrance and aptitude test, when I was in high school. And I thought, you know what, I think this is how I want to spend that time. And I could go into the military police MOS, probably learn a lot that would help me when I'm ready to get out. And so that's what I did. I ended up enlisting in the Navy. I was a Master at Arms for 5 years, was stationed multiple places across the country, did a deployment to South America, met my wife, got married, all the things while in the military, and then got out and came right back to that same police department where I was a dispatcher.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so then from that moment when you came back, you end up becoming a police officer. You end up going through the motions and everything you start doing.
Yep. Became a police officer, stayed at my hometown police department for about 4 years. And then I went to a larger agency, which was the sheriff's office of the county where that city was located. And then I've been here at Lake Worth ever since.
How has that been? How has it been to just even now for this moment that we're talking, reflecting on your time in the beginning to now? How has that transition been? Like, it kind of sounds like you knew that where you wanted to be, but do you ever reflect on those moments and think, wow, I've been through a lot and here I am, I got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's path is different. And I think I'm no different than anybody else, where I struggle when I look at other people's journeys and I compare them to mine. And I sometimes feel like maybe mine is not adequate or, is not as significant as what others have done. But when you take a step back and you really do reflect on who you are, what you've done, the blessings that you've been given, the positions that you've been able to serve in, I am very, very thankful to be where I am, to have come from a little small police department, dispatcher at 18, to being the chief of a police department in a major metropolitan area and the fastest growing place in the country. It's really exciting. But I don't think that I would be here if those humbling small town moments were not a part of my story.
I love that you have that as well, where if you ever have any of of your dispatchers, you hear of them or something, you would be able to take them to the side maybe and just say, I've been there, or the director, Whitney, to be able to say, well, the chief has kind of a story as well, because we're human.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that is always good for conversations like this is to realize that everyone is human. Everyone goes through something. Everyone has a moment.
Yeah.
You might see someone that is above you or below you or whatever, but I don't know. It seems like in public safety, a lot of times, at least the people that I've spoken to, like to make sure that we're all on the same level because, like I said, we're all human.
Yep.
So in that sense, when you've come back and you've been the chief this whole time, and you've got the 911 professionals taking care of the community and everyone out there in the field, for you, and especially because you come from there as well, how important is it for let's touch on this first, bridging the gap between dispatch and those out in the field and really having everyone understand. And the reason I ask this as well is because when I was at the central dispatch, when I moved back home to Southwest Michigan, what we started doing was not just having dispatch do ride-alongs, but we had officers coming in and doing sit-alongs.
Yeah.
And after like 30 minutes or so, they would look around at us and they'd say, I don't know how you guys do this. I would rather be out there chasing someone, doing whatever, than sitting here and listening to what you guys listen to. So how important is it for bridging the gap between dispatch and those out in the field?
We do the same thing. So every officer that comes through our training program, every intern that comes through our internship program is required to spend time in dispatch.
Awesome.
There's no other way to understand or even have an appropriate level of appreciation for the work that's done in there unless you just spend time and you watch and you learn and you listen.
Right.
So that's critically important. But one of the things that I really try to harp on and focus on is leadership. And if the leaders behave in a way that is dismissive of the work that's being done, then of course that's going to trickle down. So our natural instinct may be to say, oh, we need to bring in patrolmen so that they can see and understand what's going on in here. And I do agree that that's important. But I think it's even more important that their leadership know, understand, and appreciate what's happening in there, because those young officers are looking at them as an example. And if they're coming in dispatch and getting a good perspective, but then that's being contradicted by the behavior or the words of their leadership, then we're moving off course. They're not having the takeaway in the appreciation that we want them to have. So my expectation for our department's leadership, and one of the things when I get in front of other law enforcement leaders that I try to make it a point to reinforce, is that you have to model the behavior that you want to see in your officers as it relates to the treatment and the appreciation of what's going on in dispatch. You can't expect your officers to be in there and be interested if you're not in there and interested. You can't send them in there with the expectation that they learn and take something away that's going to help them in the field if you're not willing to ask your leadership to do the same. And so when you're the chief or when you're in an important leadership role, you have a lot of influence. And so the question is, what are you going to do with that influence to make things better? And I have the ability to order people to spend time in dispatch. I have the ability to not tolerate a lack of appreciation. And so I use that role and that influence to ensure that the people around our center, the people in our center, behave and appreciate the way that they're supposed to.
That is awesome. I love that, because I agree. If there is not a buy-in from everyone, then they will go have the experience, go back out, and just like you said, whatever behavior or attitude there might be, it gets washed away.
Yep.
I do remember as we go into the wrap up for this episode, and it's been awesome talking with you and learning more about you and all, but I remember something specifically in Central Dispatch in Southwest Michigan. We had a sergeant come in, and he came in with a younger deputy, and he was just kind of blowing off dispatch a little bit, the dispatchers that were there, myself included. And we were talking to him, and I don't remember what he said, but it was kind of snooty. And we just kind of looked at the sergeant, and he goes, "Hold on one second." And he turns around and looks at him, and in front of us, which I didn't think he was going to do, but in front of us, he says, "Listen, these guys here, they deal with more than you can imagine.
Mhm.
And they also control the amount of calls you go on. So these are the last people that you want to piss off.
Yeah.
So be good to them." And the guy's just kind of looking. He's like, "Oh, I apologize."
Yeah.
He had something else happen throughout the day, so he was just kind of taking it out on us a little bit. But he got a little jab there.
Yeah.
It was like, we gotta switch your mindset.
Well, good for the sergeant for stepping up and correcting that behavior.
Yeah, no, for sure, because the person could have just let it go, and then there would have been problems later and all. But I love the philosophy. I love the way you guys do it here, and the fact that you started out in dispatch as well just completely adds another layer, because you understand. You know what it's like taking those calls.
A little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean,
bit.
it was a year. There's a lot that can happen in a year.
You're right. I just don't want to oversell it. We had there are so many, and I'm sure many of your listeners have, 10 times the experience that I had. And I want to be the first one to say that small moment in time by no means gives me the ultimate perspective on the profession, but it does give me a little perspective.
Right.
And for that, I'm thankful.
I love it as well. Just the fact that you have some of that experience definitely opens the eyes to a lot of folks, a lot of other officers that, could just be talking in the sense, and you could say, "Hey, I was there.
Yeah.
I understand a lot of, what it is that they go through." So yeah, I dig that very much. So I've got one last question for you.
You bet.
As we're going into the wrap up here. And this question that I'm going to ask, it's not to change anything, but you've got, 21 years. If you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning of your public safety career, and again, it's not to change anything, because a lot of times, we go through, we get humbled, as we mentioned, or we go through these and learn these hard lessons, experience these hard lessons and such, that bring us to the person that we are today.
Yeah.
But if you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning, what would you tell yourself?
The profession needs you the way that you are right now, as you are coming in. And you don't need to change, bend, take on any other identity that you think that you're supposed to have to be able to do this job. This line of work, in my opinion, does a really good job of helping people lose who they are. The brotherhood, the subculture is really strong and really powerful, and it's good in so many ways. But in a lot of ways, it tells us who we need to be, how we need to think, or how we need to behave. And I have learned throughout my career that is not true. I came into the profession an incredibly empathetic person, and over time became quite callous, and then subsequently unfulfilled. And so then I had to break down those calluses and figure out how to exist within the profession with adequate protection without being callous and emotionless about the work that I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so when I speak to new officers, which I often do, I share this same lesson with them: is who you are when you came in. When you sat in front of that hiring board, they chose you for a reason. You weren't projecting any part of the subculture. You weren't trying to be anything that you weren't. You were being authentic to yourself, and they chose you because of what you showed them, your true self. And then for you to change and become something else is counterproductive.
Right.
We need you to be who you are and leverage your life experience and your worldview and your beliefs and all the things that make you who you are in that center. Don't change. Figure out how to leverage who you are to benefit the community, to benefit those around you. But don't feel like you need to become whatever it is that they tell you.
Perfect. That is awesome.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being on this episode and just learning more about you and everything, especially those humbling moments like those. Yeah. I always tell people, yeah, I always tell people that, it's always good to reflect, especially when people are grinding and they're just grinding and grinding to get to where they want to be or they think that they want to be. And sometimes they're in the right spot. They're in the place that they're supposed to be, but they don't give themselves the time to stop, reflect, and be aware or realize, hey, I'm actually living what I've been wanting to live.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just continue chasing that tail.
Yep.
But thank you again very, very much. This has been awesome.
Thank you for what you're doing to
appreciate that.
Be a voice for the profession and to open up these lines of communication and expose people to other ways of thinking and doing things. It is really important work, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that as well. I've been doing this for over a decade, and all of this that I do started from my own struggle in dispatch. And same as you, trying to figure out me, we got to figure out ourselves sometimes. And that's where all of it started. So thank you very much.
You bet.
For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. And the easiest way to do all of this is to simply go to links, and that's links with 2 I's, .co/IAM911, and you'll find everything there. You'll find my email, social media, where to hear the latest episodes. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Leader Next Gen Core Services. Shout out to subscribers as always. And you can see this on Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as LinkedIn Live. And there are clips all over the place on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, and TikTok. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one. And break.
Nice.
Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But imagine listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.